Many people thought they were being treated to just a regular game here this afternoon, a Monday matinee against the Vancouver Canucks. No, it was the craziest game that has probably ever happened in Minnesota Wild history, as the Wild score 7 goals in the third period en route to a 10-7 win. I don't even know where to start, as this one looks like it was trending towards over as the third period started, but the Wild had far different plans as they come away with a huge win. We'll recap everything from 5 goals in 5 minutes to Filip Gustavsson getting pulled. A lot to discuss in tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. Let's fire it up.
You are Locked On Wild Postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The Minnesota Wilds pick up an insane 10-7 win over the Vancouver Canucks here today at the Xcel Energy Center. A game that featured 7 third-period goals, featured 2 Minnesota Wild hat tricks, featured 4 power play goals, and Filip Gustavsson. I need a cigarette. I need a drink. I don't even know what to do. I'm still sitting here trying to wrap my head around what we just saw. And we all can talk about what we saw in the first couple of periods because we can't just discredit what happens. Vancouver took the lead. We went into the third period at 5-3. And then all of a sudden, Vancouver just kept putting the Wild on the power play, and the Wild kept taking advantage of it. The 5-on-3s, the Wild had a couple of those early on in the game. They weren't able to capitalize on them, but then as the game went on, they did. And they were beating Casey DeSmith in basically the same way every time. They were just getting the puck to between the face-off circles and just letting it rip. A great job by Eriksson, by Zuccarello, by Kaprizov, by Boldy, of just continually getting the puck to that part of the front of the net and just continuing to beat Casey DeSmith, who, by the way, was 5-0-1 against the Minnesota Wild in his career heading into this one today. And he got absolutely torched in this game. If you would have told me that somebody would have had a worse goalie performance today than Filip Gustavsson did, I wouldn't have believed you. But Casey DeSmith, to his credit, found a way to do just that. And let me tell you, seeing this one at the X was something, because this has been a case for most of the season, is that the fans have just they are just waiting for opportunities to go crazy and to go nuts in these games. And the Wild have not consistently been able to give them those opportunities, especially early on. And this place, it was so loud, my ears were hurting in the third period as the Wild scored 5 goals in 5 minutes. They had taken the lead. They had tied the game and taken the lead in 5 minutes in the third period. Like, let's just go through the timestamps on these goals. Joel Eriksson scores 29 seconds in to the third period to make it 5-4. Kirill Kaprizov scores 1:23 in to make it 5-5. Joel Eriksson scores again at 1:44, so 20 seconds later to make it 6-5. Then 4:48 into the first period, Marco Rossi is credited with the 7th goal of the game. That makes it 7-5. 5:12 into the third period, Kaprizov scores again to make it 8-5. I've never seen anything like it. I don't think it would have made any difference what Vancouver was doing, because I saw some people on Twitter wondering, why didn't Vancouver pull Casey DeSmith. And both of these teams are playing back-to-backs. So Vancouver gets to go play Colorado tomorrow. The Wild get to go play Winnipeg. I don't think bringing Thatcher Demko in would have mattered because this was one of those few instances in which things just completely flip. And I don't think there was anything really Vancouver could have done. And to Vancouver's credit, as a team that is the toast of the Western Conference, they continued to push. They continued to fight. They got it to 8-7. But for whatever reason, for whatever cosmic reason there is, the Wild just were not going to be denied. And it's funny because you heard after the game, John Hines was asked, like, what did you do? What did you do between the second and the third periods to fire this up, to get this comeback going? He said he really didn't do anything. There was no immaculate speech. There was no like throwing a chair or anything to try to get everybody fired up. And I don't know how much credit should be given to that goal that was taken off the board in the second period. The Wilds thought they had that crazy goal that never went in, but they thought it should be a goal for Kaprizov. They thought that was going to be the goal to get it to 5-4. That goal got taken off the board, but I think at that point, there was maybe a feeling of, hey, we could actually do this. And the reason that the Wild were able to do what they did here today was because they just kept attacking. Even when they were trailing early on in this game, the Wilds attacked a ton. They were attacking from the get-go. They had opportunities from right out in front of the net, and they could not get those to go. Vancouver had only 2 shots through like the first, I don't know, when did Vancouver score their second goal? 13:21 was when JT Miller scored the second goal of the game for Vancouver. That was the second shot of the game for the Canucks, and yet they had the 2-0 lead at that point. The Wild did get cut it to 1 with 19:10 gone in the first. I could sit here and say 1,000 different things, but honestly, I still just cannot wrap my head around the fact that what we saw is like a once in a blue moon type game. 10 goals is a franchise record ever for the Minnesota Wild, and they scored 7 goals in the third period. I have never seen anything like this. I could watch hockey for 10, 15 more years and may see this once or twice. And like this is kind of the thing. There now is the dual dichotomy of how you react to this. Like, do you kind of say, all right, this is the start of the run, or do you kind of look at all the things that led to the Wild getting to behind 5-3? And I don't know, honestly, whichever way you want to go, like I still am just trying to process everything that we saw in this one. I mean, 5 goals in 5 minutes. A game in which your goalie gets yanked because Filip Gustavsson was not good today at all. But then again, Canucks got completely off kilter, and Casey DeSmith just got torched in this one here today. That top combination, I know a lot of it happens on the power play, but that top combination, those 3 guys, and in particular, like let's hierarchy this. Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson were possessed today. Absolutely possessed. They were on an insane level. Eriksson getting to the front of the net, He also had a couple of different breakaway opportunities. Kirill Kaprizov was just skating all over the ice. But Matt Boldy had a good step-up game here today. Mats Zuccarello came back after a very quiet game against the Buffalo Sabres. And so you get all of those, you get those like top 5 guys that just completely carry the weight here today. And we still had a couple of guys that just, just were there for the ride. So there's a lot to break down from this game, which is why you may have noticed we did not have our typical Micheletti Monday episode here today. Alex and I are going to record tonight. These 1 p.m. starts on Mondays are kind of weird. So we're going to record tonight, mainly because that gives us an opportunity to just try to figure out what the hell happens in this game. So that's kind of my 2 cents. Is it's one of those that is different from what we have seen from this Wild team, because so many times we've seen them kind of seed the game in the third period. Like, you're down 5-3. You maybe get it to 5-4, and but that's as close as you get. But you've got 2 different things that you can look at here. You know, how you got it to 5-3 and how you got it to 10-7. So I had a lot of fun in this one, especially in that third period. That was just outrageous. And so, you know, that's, I think, the big takeaway here is it was fun to see some just absolute chaos go the way of the Minnesota Wild. And so now the Wilds are sitting 2 points out of a playoff spot. We've got a lot to get to here in this one today. So we'll break and then we'll come back. We'll get your comments. If you've got any questions that you would like to have answered in this one, just line them up in the comments and we'll get to them before we sign off here for today. Again, the Minnesota Wild's 10-7 win over the Vancouver Canucks, 7 goals in the third period. I still am just trying to wrap my head around what we just saw, but we'll do our best to do that as we continue our Locked On Wild postcast after this. Tonight's Locked On Wild postcast is brought to you by Camino Consulting. How would you like to get to know someone better in an hour than you would in a year? Understanding one another better prevents small misunderstandings from becoming big, ongoing fights. After providing more than 20 years of service to small and mid-sized businesses, helping management groups navigate conflict and onboarding new employees, Camino is offering a digital seminar for families and couples. Did your Valentine's gift of tickets to the game not go over as well as you'd hoped? Get the couples and family online seminar for 25% off for the month of February using the discount code Locked On. Again, that is discount code Locked On for 25% off for the rest of the month at CaminoConsulting.ca. Or mention Locked On when reaching out for a business seminar and receive the first 5 profiles free. Again, that's CaminoConsulting.ca. CaminoConsulting.ca. Tonight's Locked On Wild postcast is also brought to you by Sleeper. And folks, Sleeper is here as we fight towards the end of the season to tell you you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. And folks, let me tell you, if you took Kirill Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson, Matt Boldy, Mats Zuccarello, they cashed in pretty much every category that you need to have a big day, winning 100 times your money. You can also play Sleeper Daily Fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, and college football. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Welcome back to tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. The Minnesota Wild beat Vancouver by a score of 10-7. And we will get to your comments here. There has been a lot of this in recapping today's action. What happened? How did we get to this point? And quite frankly, I really don't know. So there's one thing to be said about the amount of penalties that Vancouver took in this game. They put the Wild not only, I think the Wild were 4 of 6 on the power play in this one today. But the thing I think that killed Vancouver was the fact that they just kept stacking the penalties on top of each other. It's one thing to get called for a trip or a slash. It's another thing to also commit a delay of game penalty in that same time period or to commit another penalty. And it's not as if there was a little bit of overlap in a lot of these cases. The Wilds, in the 5-on-3s that they have, the last 3 at least were a minute plus each. And credit to the Wilds on the power play for, again, getting to the same spot and continuing to attack the net. And this is something that we've seen from the Wilds when their power play is going well, is they set up shop with a Joel Eriksson or somebody right in front of the net in between the two face-off circles. Then they kind of box around, trying to kind of pass the puck to each other to get defensemen out of position or to get, in this case, Vancouver players to try to come out and challenge. And you get the goalie focused on, in this instance, in the Joel Eriksson goal instance, I think it was Matt Boldy on the right side face-off circle. All of Casey DeSmith's attention is on Matt Boldy, and then you quick pass to Joel Eriksson. He's ready to shoot, and you just laser one past him to pick up the goal. And the Wild just hit that formula every single time for all 5 of those goals. It was just the same thing, just attack the front of the net. And it's like when you stagger a fighter, you just go right back to that same area. Like if you knock somebody down in a UFC fight, how many times do you see the fighter that gets the knockdown just go straight to the head and just try to hit it as hard as he can repeatedly over and over and over again? So credit for this Wild power play that we have seen be far too selective at many points throughout the season. Far too selective. Really play with purpose here in this one tonight. And I mean, Casey DeSmith, a pretty good backup goalie for Vancouver, absolutely just got shredded in that third period. As Brian notes, fastest 6 goals in 25 years by his. And I mean, it was within the first 5 minutes and 12 seconds of the third period, the Wild all of a sudden they went from being down by 2 to up by 3. It was insane. It was crazy. And, Quadrum brings up a great point as we pivot off of that. Quadrum brings up a good point because you are going now from a Vancouver team that scores a ton of goals to the Winnipeg Jets, who at last check, they're currently losing to Calgary by a score of 4-3 heading into the third period of that game. But they're also on the road. The Winnipeg Jets, as of right now, not counting today's standings, they have allowed the fewest goals in the NHL, in the entirety of the NHL, and it's not by a little. They have a large lead on the next closest team. They've allowed 119 goals on the season in 52 games. So you're not going to be able to do this to the Winnipeg Jets tomorrow. You're going to have to fight for everything that you get. It's a very physical Winnipeg team. And so the worry then is, can you get the goaltending to kind of keep Winnipeg in check, because this will be a much tighter game than today's was. But Marc-Andre Fleury will start. John Hines said that after the game, that having to bring Fleury in this one did not change his tune, did not change his strategy. So it'll be Marc-Andre Fleury in net against the Jets tomorrow night. You just have to, at this point, you'd like to see more balance from the scoring department, but this has the makings of a ride your top line all over it. That's the line that has been the most consistently excellent over these last few games. They combined, and again, it was on the power play, so it doesn't count all at once, but those three, Kirill Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson and Matt Boldy, combined for 7 goals and 9 assists tonight. So they had I think it was 13 points in their first 3 games together. The stat that Denny had the other night. Well, now they have a 16 points output by themselves. Just insane in this one. Tonight. So it was just outrageously, just outrageous. Do the Wilds continue to get backup goalies as a fringe playoff team? You know, it is interesting. It seems like the Wild do match up with backups quite a bit. I think the way Vancouver looks at it, with Casey DeSmith's history against this team, and it's not necessarily the win-loss record itself, I think he just plays better against a high volume of low-angle shots. The Wild shoot low quite a bit. I think he just plays better against that than Thatcher Demko does. So I think for that instance, Vancouver was like, we feel very comfortable with Casey DeSmith in this game, and the Wild just made him pay. That does wrap up the series against Vancouver. The Wild went 2-1 against the Canucks, and the goals for and the goals against were pretty close. It was 3-2 in the Canucks' favor after the 2 games. Now it is 12-10 in favor of the Minnesota Wild. So congratulations to the Minnesota Wild for tripling their goal output against Vancouver in just one single game. Yeah, Dougie, the atmosphere was it was outrageous in this game. I keep saying outrageous, but it's the perfect adjective for this. It was insane. And it got louder every goal that the Wild scored. And so you go from that first goal to make it 5-4 to that goal to make it 8-5. The fans got louder every single goal that was scored. And that was really fun to see, because for large stretches of the first and second period, it got pretty quiet because there just wasn't a ton that was going on for the home team. They trailed pretty much the entire game. So there wasn't huge reasons to cheer for that. And then the Wild just completely flipped the game. And just that is even back to 2 years ago when they scored all the goals. The Wild never did that. Never did that. And so this is something that is just a rarity to see from a team like this that just has large stretches of time where they struggle to score. NASCAR Kelly noting that the game will be replayed tonight, 7 p.m. and at midnight as well. So if you missed the goals, if you want to see the goals again, I do. You can have that opportunity to do so here this evening. Tomorrow will show what team we are. A team that has hurt Kaprizov twice and embarrassed on a back-to-back. Wild need to show up. This is the thing. This is the thing that I have been criticized for being far too negative about, is not showing faith in what this team is doing. Because we've seen this 1,000 times this year where the Wild have picked up wins against Eastern Conference or Western Conference teams below them in the standings. And then they come away with a win like this and people hop right back on, but then they lose the next game 6 or 7-0. So that's the big test. And so in the significant 7, as I'm calling it, these 7 games coming up that are really they're really just make or break for this season. The Wild are 1-0. Was it topsy-turvy to get there? Yes. But at the end of the day, you get 2 regulation points. And so the Wild accomplished the first goal of these 7 games, which is to win. But now you got to go out and do it against Winnipeg. You got to go beat the Jets. The Wild have struggled with this so far this season. And you can't let it... See, this is the other part of it, too. You can't let it just devolve into kind of this mess of frustration. Like, that's what happened in the second game of that back-to-back. After Kaprizov was injured in the first game, second game turned into just a fight fest. You've got to beat them on the ice and continue to pick up these critical wins. The Wild, as of right now, courtesy of their 58 points, and with Seattle losing right now, the Wilds have vaulted into a tie with Nashville with 58 points. Nashville is currently losing to the Detroit Red Wings 3-2. And the other teams that are in this fight as well, which is pretty much just Arizona, because they're the only other team in action right now. Arizona is currently leading Edmonton 3-2, trying to snap their 9-game losing streak. They are 8 points back of the Minnesota Wild at this current moment. So I'm excited for tomorrow's game, but it's an opportunity for the Wild to either show who they really are or for the Wild to show us who we have seen them be pretty much all season. Now, let's discuss a couple of other things. As Michael Berger Music asks, did Rossi play fourth line with Lucchini and Letteri? Greetings from Austria. Hines did a lot of roster juggling at the end of this game or down the stretch, because it seemed like stretches in which I think he tried to kind of, let's throw Kaprizov in with these 2 guys for a little bit of a longer shift, and then when it's time for the other 2 to come off, then Boldy and Eriksson came back on the ice. Or let's throw Matt Boldy in with this guy and this guy. It seemed like he was trying to mix some guys in because those 3 were going so well that I think he was just trying to mix them in for longer stretches throughout the game to just try to help provide a spark to the rest of the lineup. Boldy had 18 minutes, 34 seconds tonight. Eriksson had 21-23. Kaprizov had 20 minutes, 41 seconds. Ryan Hartman actually played 20 minutes in this game. Ryan Hartman also had a just atrocious penalty in this one. So I'm actually surprised by the minute count for Hartman. Rossi finished with 11 minutes and 7 seconds. So there were some interesting combinations down the stretch, and it was, I don't know. It's just interesting that that they were able to come away with that win. So it is Hellebuck in net for the Winnipeg Jets here today, which means that the Wild will get another opportunity to try to crack Laurent Brossoit And Brossoit, the last time these two teams played, got the start. It was not Connor Hellebuck. And let me just go back to the numbers for Brossoit in that game. He stopped 24 of 26 shots, and the Wild ended up losing that game by a score of 3-2. He was really good in the 3 starts that he had in January, but he also played Anaheim, Chicago, and Toronto. In his most recent game on the 8th, he lost 4-1 to Philadelphia. It's the same situation. It doesn't matter if it's Connor Hellebuck or if it's Laurent Brossoit. You just have to attack the front of the net. You got to make that the priority. And if this team tries to kind of hit from if the shots come from outside, that's not a real great recipe for success. Every hockey game ever played is a much tighter game than accurate. You're not gonna. In fact, the only time I think there was a game last year where it was like 13-11, and that is the only time I've ever seen both teams get as close to the goal count as this one. So I don't know what to make of it. No Foligno, no Maroon tomorrow. Duhaime. If there's fighting that happens in tomorrow's game, it'll be Duhaime or it will probably be Hartman. Those are probably your fighters on hands for tomorrow's game against Vancouver. Shaw should replace Johansson on the second line, and Freddie should head to the press box. Let's look at the Lifetime Fitness Cardio Awards of the night for tonight's game. So even though Connor Dewar didn't have a shot on net, he still had 5 hits and 2 block shots. Brandon Duhaime had a block and 4 hits. They both played about 13 minutes apiece, which was nice to see. But Freddie Gaudreau, 12 minutes, 54 seconds, no shots, 1 block, 1 hit. Marcus Johansson played 17 minutes, 1 shot, 1 block, and was a -2. In fact, that second line of Johansson, Zuccarello, and Rossi were the line most commonly scored against in this one. And look, even though Zuccarello was a -2, he did have a penalty as well. He still had a goal, 3 assists, and looked better than he did in that game against the Buffalo Sabres. So it's all about guys just showing up and just contributing something to the mix. If you are going to hit a bunch of people, okay, that is your contribution to the game. If you're going to block a ton of shots, awesome. That's your contribution to the game. But when we have these guys that are on ice for like 17, 18 minutes a night, and they don't have really anything that they contribute, and then you look at the analytical side of things, and it's like, well, their Corsi 4 was in the 30s. Yeah, that's not a great sign either. So it's, as of right now, and I saw this on Twitter quite a bit, this is a one-line team, and you're going to need to get more than that as the season unfolds. As Trav noted, Seattle just tying it up. So it is 3-3, and there's 10-16 remaining in that game. GA007 has called me on this before, but he's absolutely accurate. Hartman played 4 minutes on the power play. So let's just look at even strength time in this one. Boldy. So Hartman played 15 minutes, 37 seconds, even strength, and was 4 of 11 in the faceoff circle. Played 4 minutes on the power play, played 44 seconds on the kill. Beyond that, Kaprizov had 14-22 of even strength. Boldy had 12-17. Joel Eriksson had 12-52. Marcus Johansson had 14 minutes and 21 seconds of even strength time and really didn't do a ton with it. So that is just great. What time is puck drop tomorrow? 10:36 a.m. It seems like that's the case, is that these back-to-back games, the Wild end up having to play an afternoon game after an afternoon game, but it's actually a 7 p.m. puck drop tomorrow. So we get the late start after the afternoon game, and good call. Middleton can also drop the gloves. So there are players out there that can answer the bell if needed. Will giving us the high water mark. The highest scoring NHL game was a 21-goal game between Edmonton and Chicago. Wild getting close. Setting the poor goaltending and defense aside, the refs really lost control of this game. They let Vancouver interfere over a dozen times just in the first. That led to a few goals, obvious screens. It was interesting on that. It was interesting on that second. Or no, it was the first Vancouver goal. There were two Canucks that were both setting screens in that area, and Gustavsson was not able to see it. But then you look at some of the other goals. The Elias Pettersson one was really, I took issue with, because nobody tried to go get him in the face-off circle, and he just lets it fly. Gustavsson doesn't see the shot. As Hines said after the game, he said Gustavsson was really fighting it today, which is why he felt the need to go to I just blanked. Fleury. They're playing hockey out here on the ice, and so I completely just lost my train of thought. But Hines felt the need to go to Fleury because Gustavsson was fighting it and just did not look right out there on the ice. Now, I don't think it's an injury situation per se. He just didn't have it, and sometimes goalies just don't. And so Fleury came in. I can't imagine having to come in as a goalie. I mean, you've warmed up, but you didn't take any of the starter reps. Yes, you did get some work at the end of the warm-up session, but you're sitting on the bench for 2 periods. You get kind of cold, and so then getting the call, hey, you're going to come in. You got to go warm up in a hurry. Like, I would have to go hop on a bike. I would have to go face the hockey equivalent of the pitching machine. I don't envy anybody having to do that, but the Wild won today in spite of their goaltending with just a chaotic offensive output through this one. People on Instagram are mad, saying the refs gifted the Wild all these power plays. I see. Again, we talked about this at the start of the show, is if you fling a puck over the net off the glass, like out of play, that's not a ref making a call in favor of a particular team. That's a penalty. And so the thing that happened for Vancouver, that's and this was a very physical game too. Like, there was plenty that happened. There's that weird penalty in which Mats Zuccarello and one of the Vancouver players both got taken off the ice because they got into a sword fight out there before the face-off. It's the fact that Vancouver just continued to just stack them together. Like, that was nothing that the Wild did in particular to earn any of those. that was just how things played out in this one. This is why Flower is an HOF. I can't imagine, especially at his age, to come cold into the third down 5-3. Especially against a team like this Vancouver team. Like, I'm not gonna lie. When the Canucks made it 8-7, I fully expected they were going to tie it up. I just can't imagine asking a goalie to do that. And yeah, 4 2-man advantages you might get in a year, not a game. I don't think that I have ever seen anything like this in terms of the Wild getting that many 5-on-3s. I'm just glad they capitalized on them, because how long have we seen that so far this season in which they just are incapable of scoring on a 5-on-3? Oh, wait, they did it earlier in the game. Can you help me understand what Freddie brings to the team? I can see that JoJo has speed, but what does Freddie do besides being a trustworthy guy, whatever that means? I'd be trying to offload him ASAP if I was Bill Guerin. So this is an interesting one, because we remember we saw quite extensively how many times Dean Evison would go to Freddie Gaudreau for a late faceoff, for any number of things. He's the shootout king, or at least was under Dean Evison. I think Freddie was a guy that Dean, and obviously because they had history together from previous minor league stops, obviously that's in play. But I just think Freddie Gaudreau was more of a Dean Evison like go-to player, and John Hines has come in, and the two go-to guys, well, from a center perspective, the go-to guy for him is just Joel Eriksson, which is, it's exactly how it should be. So credit to John Hines for saying, you know what? No, I'm going to just use our best center in the instances in which we need critical faceoffs. We've seen that a ton since John Hines took over, which makes a 5-year extension for a guy who is coming off of 2 seasons after being a relative unknown just seems like a mistake. It seems like it was given out too early for a guy who, if we're being honest, what we see now probably peaked at 19 goals. And a lot of that was done because he had extreme skill players on either side of him. Gaudreau was the center for the Kevin Fiala and Matt Boldy experience from a couple of years ago. And so he benefited from those players being able to put him in good situations to score. And now that he's playing a bottom 6 role, which is where he is far more equipped, those opportunities just aren't there. Honestly, we've talked about it a ton. If we're looking at the extensions and the ones that I have the most issue with, Freddie Gaudreau's is on top of the list. Like, Mats Zuccarello at least is still producing. Ryan Hartman has moments. I would probably put Marcus Foligno second to Freddie Gaudreau. But that Gaudreau deal is just, and it's not even the AAV. Like, I've had people press me on this on Twitter. I've had people press me on the Gaudreau AAV. $2.1 million is fine. 5 years with a 15-team no move, that's the problem. If you would have given Freddie Gaudreau a 2-year deal, I would not have said a word about that. But 5 years for a guy who has only really played 2 full NHL seasons, and it was with extremely skilled players, that seems like a little bit of a premature extension, if you're asking me. Is there a beer league game being played at the X? That horn's going out. Yeah, there is some action down here, and it's actually, ironically enough, because of the game that we just had, it's 6-6 right now with 23 minutes to play in the first period. Shots are 24, or no, those are actually still the Minnesota Wild numbers for shots, but the goals are still accurate, 6-6. So, yeah, that's my biggest thing with Freddie's. It's just because, again, like I'm not naive to the fact that as the salary cap goes up, player contracts are going to go up as well. It's 5 years in trade protection. Like there's just not a scenario in which that makes sense for me. So that's my biggest issue there. Again, Zuccarello still producing. His contract is only a couple of seasons. I fully get why his happens to line him up fully with Kirill Kaprizov, and he's still productive. Hartman's, again, he is a shoot the puck type player. The penalty that he had today, I nearly caved my skull in, banging my head on the desk. But he's still sitting at, I think, 15 goals this season. So it's these other ones that have been handed out that cause me great headaches. But all in all, crazy win, 10-7 for your Minnesota Wilds. Here in this one today, yeah, Trav knocked it out of the park here. Freddie has played himself into a full no move. No team is going to inquire. You'd have to sell when Dean Evison goes to the Los Angeles Kings and is their head coach next year. It's going to be a real hard sell because you just fleeced the Kings in the Brock Faber trade. If you were going to get Freddie Gaudreau to be sent there, you would have to really sweeten that. And at this point, I'm not super thrilled about having to attach something to get rid of a guy, but that's the bet that this team has made. So can't wait to see how this plays out because this will be what we talk about all off season too. So the Wild get the win 10-7 against Vancouver. They now have the Winnipeg Jets coming up tomorrow night. Alex and I will recap all the action with a Locked On episode for you coming up tomorrow. We waited so that we could do a Victory Micheletti Tuesday. How's that for you? So we'll talk about all of this. We'll talk about tomorrow's game, but I think I'm going to get on the road here as still going to try to wrap my head over what happens. If anybody has any questions that you would like answered for future episodes, I'm going to start doing this too. If you have a question that you would like to have answered for a future episode, shoot it to me in an email, lockedonwild@gmail.com. I want to try to start putting some of these together. So if you have something you'd like looked into, just shoot it to me and we'll take care of it for you. Also, make sure to hit the like button before you head out for the day and subscribe if you have not already for future Locked On Wild episodes and content. We have new episodes for you, including Locked On Wild postcasts every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.